What's up, y'all? Want to welcome you back to another Field Note Fridays episode powered by Federal Premium. We're going to be breaking these next 3 weeks down into a couple of parts with our very own Brian Murphy. What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be breaking down some 3 key senses of the white-tailed deer. That's going to be sight, smell, and hearing. And so Brian is going to dive into all 3 of those aspects of the white-tailed deer, how you as a hunter can look at those things and benefit from them and potentially find a way to get that buck in closer, go after that big buck that you've been catching on camera for the past 2 years. But we're going to get Brian on here to talk about that for the next 3 weeks. And again, y'all, we just want to thank you for your support. Appreciate you for tuning in to the HuntStand podcast, and we hope you take a lot from this from Brian Murphy.
Hey, man, good to be here. Always willing to talk deer.
Heck yeah, man. Always talk about deer. So, man, let's dive into it. Let's not get the feet wet. Let's just get into it with the deer senses, man. So you're the expert on everything deer, so start telling us, man.
Well, yeah, Will, I think, as hunters, we all wonder and speculate a lot of campfire lore around what deer see, what they smell, what they hear, heck, what they touch and what they taste. So I think the best place to start is just the realization that whitetails have the same 5 senses that we do, but they're very different. And those, again, are sense of sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. And I think we've probably pioneered our learning as hunters the most in the fields of sight and probably hearing in the last couple of decades, perhaps even more than the sense of smell. But I'd like to start with the sense of sight. That's one that I've personally had a long history with as a deer researcher. At the University of Georgia many moons ago, when I completed my graduate research there, actually in scent communication on whitetails, the university hired me on immediately after as a whitetail research coordinator.
Okay.
So I actually worked for the University of Georgia, and my goal every day was to get up and learn things about whitetail deer. I mean, that's pretty daggum cool, right? So we had one of the greatest captive deer programs and research faculty at the time, Dr. Larry Marsh and Dr. Carl Miller. So I was the intermediary between them and all the students and the science. So we tackled deer vision. Mm-hmm. And back in the 90s, there was still a lot of speculation about what deer saw. And in particular, are they colorblind or not? And therefore, is blaze orange that we are required to wear in most states hurting us or helping us, or neutral as hunters? And so we pioneered a landmark study that serves to this day as kind of the fundamental study on whitetail vision. We actually acquired the services of professors from University of California, Santa Barbara, and University of Wisconsin, and brought down the 2 top mammalian vision research scientists in the country, certainly perhaps in the world, maybe.
Wow.
And we studied visual capabilities of whitetail deer, fallow deer, cattle, sheep, and goats all at once. So I'll talk about the whitetail stuff. Before we dove into that, we did do basic work on what we knew about the deer's eye compared to our eye. And there are some fundamental differences. Just before we dove into the research at all, just what do we know about what a deer's eye, how it's adapted versus ours? And we noticed a number of fundamental differences. One, humans have a round pupil. Okay. Deer have a slit, kind of a tapered opening.
Okay.
I'll talk about why that matters in just a minute. Deer also have very wide eye spacing. Their spacing is on the side of their head. Ours are front forward. We're a predator. We look forward. They're looking at danger from all directions. Mm-hmm. So horses, open game, plains game, wide open space animals have wide spacing eyes, which gives them a bigger field of view than humans, but poorer visual acuity. In other words, detail to see fine detail. And I'll talk a little bit about why that matters for hunting in just a minute.
Okay.
Deer also have something that most hunters have seen at night with their headlights or their flashlights. Deer's eyes shine. Mm-hmm. Ours don't. what is that? Why is that? And many other predators and many other animals have that same structure in their eye, and it's called a tapetum. And a tapetum is just simply a mirror. It's specialized crystals that form a mirror-like substance that allows deer to utilize light twice. So what happens with a human or any animal that doesn't have that structure is light will come in, get concentrated in the back of their retina, and basically that's it. You use all the light you can one time and you're done.
Okay.
Deer that comes in, they utilize that light. It hits that reflective layer in the back of their eye, and it basically reverses the direction of that flow of light back through the eye. So they're using light twice. So it's a doubler, a magnifier of the light. So when you look at their pupil shape difference, ours being round, theirs being a slit, theirs has the ability to open about 3 times wider than ours does.
Jeez.
Anybody that knows anything about camera lenses knows that the aperture, you open it up if you want more light.
Mm-hmm.
The same is true with a deer. They have the ability to open up their aperture in their eye, if you will, and it goes 3 times larger, roughly, than a human's. The way that works in light gathering is it works as a function of the square root. And so it's actually many times greater than that. It's about roughly 9 times based on our calculations that a deer has about 9 times the light gathering ability than does a human.
Jeez.
And then it doubles with that tapetum, that reflective layer.
Okay.
So it becomes 18 times greater. So our best estimates are that deer can see in low light about 18 times better than humans. And that makes sense. They're a prey animal that has to avoid danger in low light conditions, early morning, late evening, and at night. So again, their eyes are adapted to what they do. Now, when it comes to color vision, this is where our research really brought home some new findings. Humans, we have our eyes are comprised of 2 main types of cells types called rods and cones. And rods are simply the structures in our eyes that allow us to see at night and in low light conditions and in black and white. So they're kind of the slow firing, work at night, work in black and white.
Okay.
Then we have these other structures called cones that allow us to see in daylight, see color. That's kind of our daytime processing. Right now, you looking at your computer screen, your cones are firing and your rods are pretty quiet. If we shut off all the lights and closed all the windows, your rods would fire up. And of course, because we're mostly a predator that functions during daylight, we are heavily cone focused. We see great color. We see great in the daylight. Deer have a lower concentration of the cones and a higher concentration of the rods. Okay. Rods allow us to see, or them to see better at night. So they're more nighttime adapted. We're more daytime color adapted. Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing our research found is that deer, unlike humans, we have 3 what we call cone photopigments. All that means are specialized cells on those cones that allow us to basically code for the red, the green, and the blue spectrums. Okay. Just the 3 main color spectra that we see. In fact, before your time, you're too young for this, but we used to have RGB controls on our TVs because those are the 3 main. You'd basically set them on your old color TVs because those are the 3 wavelengths that humans can see in. You'd set the RGB red, green, blue wavelengths on your TV.
You didn't have HDMI back then?
No, this was well before those days. So we have a specialized cone photoreceptor that allows us to see well in the short, which are the blues, the mediums, which are the greens, and the long wavelengths colors, which are the reds. Okay. Deer, we found, only have 2 of these. So we're a dichromat. We're a trichromat with 3. They're a dichromat, which simply means they have 2 of the 3. Now, the one they have a blue, we have a blue. They're pretty similar. We'll talk about some slight differences there. We have a green. They have a hybrid green-red. So we have a true red, green, and blue. They only have 2, and their second one is intermediate between our green and our red. And what that means is we see the full color spectrum. They only see in the blues and somewhere between the yellows, kind of between the green and blue, which is yellow. So they're going to see in two main color forms. We're going to see in the spectrum the three main red, green, blue.
Gotcha.
Now, what that means for blaze orange is that because they're missing that long cone photopigment, we have a red one.
Okay.
We have the blue, the green, and the red. They're missing the red. So they cannot distinguish long wavelength colors. Blaze orange is a long wavelength color.
Huh.
So the take-home message here is they do not see orange like we see orange. They cannot distinguish orange probably from red or green. They have a condition in humans, red-green color blindness. We all know humans that have it. It's actually a condition called protanopia. Basically, deer have that in essence. So if you want to kind of see how a deer sees, find a human that's red-green colorblind, and they can tell you. So they couldn't separate green or red or blaze orange when lined up. We can see distinct differences in those colors. They cannot. So they that's why blaze orange is not an impediment to us as hunters, is because they simply do not have the cell type in their eye to distinguish that. Now on the other end of it, the blue part of the wavelength, we don't see very good into the low wavelengths of blue light. And I'm talking about that early morning blue, that nightclub blue. When you walk in at night under a bug zapper type light or a blue light and you're white or your jeans pop, that's the light wavelength I'm talking about here.
Okay.
You don't see real well in that wavelength.
No.
The main reason is because we were born with a UV filter over our eyes. We are a long-lived species, and the good Lord above built us in a natural filter that keep us from going blind by age 40, because otherwise the UV light would cause us to go blind. But what that does is it's like putting on a set of shooting glasses. It filters that blue wavelength out,
Okay.
that we don't see as well in it. Deer are not as long-lived species, obviously, and don't need it, so they don't have that lens. So they see deeper into the blues, and they see the blues much, much more vividly than we do.
Huh.
So the worst color a hunter could wear is a pair of blue jeans.
I was about to say, so don't wear blue.
Yeah, and that's accentuated. To test this theory, all you have to do is, get a pair of faded blue jeans you like, and go out right at dawn or right at dusk and look at them, and you'll notice that they glow. They emit, because there's a lot of natural blue light. Blue light is common morning and evening. And so those short wavelength colors, the blues, lighter shaded colors will pop because the natural blue wavelength of light, which predominates early morning and late evening when deer are active, it will accentuate those colors. So be careful of the blues, and don't worry about the oranges. So you can get away with a lot more orange, and don't try to get away with the blue.
So, I would assume that mule deer and elk probably have very similar eyesight characteristics. We can assume, I think reasonably, that the North American deer family would have equal visual capabilities. Gotcha.
We saw very similar results in fallow deer, which fallow deer, as I mentioned earlier, we did cattle, sheep, goats, fallow deer, and whitetail deer in our research. And fallow deer come from a different evolutionary path than the North American deer do, and yet they had very similar visual capabilities. So even old world deer, which has a very different path to where they got to today versus a whitetail or a mule deer, which are very close. They're actually cousins. We can make pretty I think sure assumptions that that mule deer and elk would see this pretty much the same as what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Other thing we found about deer that I think is pretty cool is that the structure of the way their eye works versus humans is all of our cones are really concentrated in the center of our eye, because when we're looking at something, we're a predator, we're looking straight forward, and we're focused on one spot. And so with a very high concentration, centralized concentration of cones in our eye, we can concentrate all those on a spot and read, find newspaper at close distance and a stop sign at good distance if you're young like you. So that visual acuity is our benefit as a predator. Deer, their cones are much more spread out, so they don't see as sharp as we do. But what they can do is keep something in focus across a whole spectrum. So the example I like to use is that if I'm a human and a deer is trotting across a field, I have to keep my eyes focused hard on that animal and move my head with it to keep it in focus. But I can keep it in really sharp focus, but I got to move with it. Deer watching a human walk across the field, they can stay completely stationary, and it's you moving across their retina that they're viewing instead of them moving their head, because they have this band of cells spread across this slit that I mentioned earlier, so that they can keep you in equal focus across a wide range of the horizon. It's not as sharp as ours, but they can keep you in focus. And what that allows them to do is obviously, stay very motionless as a prey animal and watch a predator moving and not have to give up its head by moving. But also, most importantly, we think, is when they're actually moving themselves, when they're running through the forest.
Yeah.
They don't look at every rock and tree and root like we have to. If we're running helter-skelter through the forest, we're going to trip and fall or get a branch hit. We're going to have trouble.
Yeah.
And if you compound that by putting it at night, can you imagine running as fast as you could run through a rocky wooded trail and you would, humans would make it 20 steps before we're,
I'd get clotheslined.
Back to the head with a branch or trip over a root or a rock. Deer, because they are, again, very adapted to what they do, they can keep the horizon completely in focus and keep their head stationary and keep everything in focus. So they're moving through the forest. Everything stays in focus. They're not having to move their head to keep up with it. Because they can also use the light much more efficiently. They're seeing better at night. So they can combine these two strengths, the ability to keep something in focus across a spectrum with the ability to gather more light, to be able to run through the forest at night and not hit their antlers on a tree or even trip and fall. So these are just some adaptive mechanisms that deer have. They can basically, really focus on a wide spectrum at one point. They also have a much higher, this is a big term, but it's pretty simple in definition. It's called a flicker fusion rate. And flicker fusion rate, if you've ever watched a TV monitor, computer monitor, where the lines are scrolling really, really fast, and then after a while, it just kind of stop. They go to whatever the picture is, or it goes to nothing. The human brain can only process at a certain speed. This is our flicker fusion rate, our ability to process these lines.
Right.
Deer have a much higher flicker fusion rate than we do. So where we would go static, where we can't see it any faster than that, they would still be seeing lines. And all that means is that they can slow an image down to where, we see something, they can pick it up so much quicker, and it accentuates it so easy. They can pick up movement. It's basically a movement ability that allows them to see and detect movement at an incredible high rate, much faster than the humans can. So your micro movement of a little shift in the deer stand is accentuated probably several fold in terms of how easy they pick you up.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all things that hunters have realized that, man, deer are probably seeing me, but movement is still number one. They have the incredible ability to detect movement. They don't have great detail. That's why if a deer's, every hunter has experienced a deer walking up to them and freezing and then sitting there. And if you were a human, you'd go, I'm a human. I can see that human sitting right there.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't. Often they'll stop, they'll stare at you. And then what do? They start head bobbing, moving side to side.
What is
shift.
that?
They might stomp their foot trying to get a different dimension of you because their visual acuity isn't good enough. You move, you may be game over.
Yeah.
If you stay motionless, they have a hard time seeing you. So, the take-home message is not whether a whitetail has better vision than we do. The answer is it's different. It's best for what they need it to be. We have better visual acuity. We have better color vision, better daytime vision, but we're lousy at night.
Yeah.
They're great at night. They can detect movement better. They can keep things in focus across a plain and move through the forest, keeping a whole landscape in focus versus a point that we have to look at as we're running. So it's not better or worse. It's just different.
Man, I couldn't imagine if you took our eyesight and somehow combined it with the deer's. Just like what the capabilities.
The super predator prey animal.
Yeah.
The University of Georgia folks have actually created some really cool visual images because they can go in and filter in like video. They can get raw video of a hunter in the woods or a deer, and then they can filter out certain wavelengths and change things to where we can replicate what a deer's seeing. So we can play it how a human sees the world, and then with a couple of toggles of a switch, show what we think based on science, how a deer perceives the world. Yeah. It's very different, and it's really cool. It changes a lot of things, but most importantly, it's your movement. You know, when it comes down to vision, theirs isn't as sharp as ours, but they got about a 310 degree field of view with these wide spaced eyes, and they can detect movement at a very, very rapid rate and slow it down and see it very, very clearly. So it's about movement more than color. But if you are worried about colors, leave the blue jeans at home. Don't worry about the long wavelength colors, the reds and the blues. In fact, it's what's funny, and we didn't know this at the time, but the old hunting coat, the old Filson hunting coat from back in the 60s and 70s was red and black checkerboard. Perfect color. It actually is a great color for deer. It may not be the best camouflage pattern, but nonetheless, the color combination. Deer cannot see the red at all, and the red black together is a nice dark forest sort of pattern. So they didn't know they were actually onto pretty good pattern back in the day.
It got it done back in the day, and this is all cool stuff to hear because, in my time growing up, the internet was just starting to become a thing, and I just always heard guys say, "Oh yeah, deer, they see black and white. They don't see any color. It don't matter what you wear." This or you just hear all these different myths and everything, and so that covers probably the number one sense is their vision. All right, y'all, there you go. Part 1 of the Whitetail Census series is finished and completed. We just want to thank Brian for hopping on to talk about this. And, we think this is something that y'all don't want to miss out on. So make sure that you're subscribed to the HuntStand podcast so you get a notification when part 2 drops next week. Just want to thank y'all for tuning in to this episode of Field Note Fridays powered by Federal Premium, and we'll see you next week.